Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist BBQ. I'm Jeremy Yoder, and today I'm doing a very special kosher barbecue cook. And for this cook, I was able to use the TS-120 made by Meadow Creek, and I got it from my buddies over at the Barbecue HQ in Simi Valley. I can't say enough good things about them. I like to go and just look around because they have tons of smokers. It's really cool, and they're super nice to let me use this to do something I can't do on my smoker because I've cooked tons of pork on it. So stick around, and we'll show you what goes into making kosher barbecue. Alright guys, as many barbecue days start off, it is very, very early. We're going to be taking this unused smoker so that the whole cooking process can be overseen, and we'll do some kosher brisket. We got to start super early because I have to do the kosher cook and then immediately into cooking all the regular food. So that's going to be kind of a pain, but we're going to power through it and see how it goes. Okay, so we got our briskets here and our short ribs, and a little confused because this brisket doesn't look anything like this brisket. Both kosher, no idea what I'm working with here. Open it up. Ooh, nice and sharp. Step one, remove sticker. Black kosher.
I'll actually take that. We'll sous vide this and see what we can do with it.
Sure.
After 2 days of sous viding, this thing is nice and tender.
You want to smoke it first and then sous vide?
I actually sous vide it first and then smoke it.
Okay.
And that'll give it a burnt, like almost a burnt end appearance. Give it that crust if you're just gonna eat it plain. Cool. Can I help you with anything?
I don't think so. Well, thank you. I don't know what I can say. Yeah. Alright, so this was actually folded up. That's why I didn't understand what was going on. So we just got a humongous brisket here. There's a big old boy right there. First brisket going on. All right, so we have the briskets and beef ribs on here. One benefit. Okay. Okay. All right, let's try it again. Okay, so we got the briskets and beef ribs on here, and one benefit of the reverse flow is that you get great color really fast. So these briskets have gotten great color. There's one beef rib that we put on a little bit later. We kind of added that after these were on for a couple hours. But everything else has got great color. They're doing really well. It's cooking quickly in comparison to the 500-gallon pit that I use, usually the fat stack. So I'm really happy with this little cooker, and everything's looking really good. We're going to update you a little bit later on in the process when we know a little bit more. All we can really tell at this point is good color, nothing's burning. Maybe later on we'll be able to talk to Danny, who's kind of overseeing this process, and she can break down some of the requirements for something to be kosher, because you know, if you're just doing traditional American style barbecue, it's not something you think about. But one cool thing about kosher food is that brisket, the king of barbecue in the US, is a kosher cut. So they can barbecue it just like, you know, people in Texas can. And so we'll be hopefully going over some of the basic rules of kashrut, and hopefully for you guys out there, if you've ever been curious about it, maybe you'll learn a little bit more. been 8 hours. And so these briskets and these beef ribs are looking really good. So we started to get really good fat render. We had great color right away because of the reverse flow. And I want to see if it's time to wrap, so let's open it up and take a look. So opening this up, I can tell that that color from the reverse flow is really showing up and getting really good fat render, and I'm thinking it's time to wrap. So this is a slightly different cut than what I'm used to, but this bark formation is great. Nothing is burning and it smells out of this world good. But this is about the time I think I need to wrap. I don't know what the temperature is, but if I'm guessing, I'd say maybe 175, 180 on these. But it's the color I want, it's the bark that I want, and we'll wrap them up and finish them up. And then let's take a look at one of these briskets. So this is like the size of a little baby here. It's starting to look really good. The fat is rendering beautifully. Again, great color, great smell, and it's probably about time to wrap. If I'm guessing, this is probably about 175 or so, but we can check that with the instant read thermometer. And one thing I didn't mention is that I had to do a lot of trimming to get these to look like regular Packer briskets. Maybe it's the way they're processed, I'm not exactly sure, but these are looking really good. I couldn't be any happier with how this cook's going so far. So we're gonna wrap these up, and we'll probably get some shots of that, but I've done a million brisket videos. I'm sure I'll do a million more. If you wanna know exactly why and how I do what I do, you can check out my how to smoke beef ribs video or how to smoke a brisket video. To see all the details and go to full explanation on all of that stuff. But we'll get these wrapped up in butcher paper. Hopefully we'll get these guys finished off perfectly tender and serve up some delicious kosher but still Texas style barbecue. Now one more thing I wanted to mention is I said we're going to wrap these in butcher paper, and there's a very important reason why. I think that butcher paper is superior to wrapping in foil because it preserves the bark and aids in producing tenderness in the meat, but it doesn't make the meat pot roasty. So traditional Jewish recipes for brisket is kind of a pot roasty type of thing. What I want to do is create something that's distinct and very much Texas style barbecue. So I want to leave that bark, I want that smoke flavor, I want this to be a different way entirely of preparing brisket. So brisket is very traditional in Jewish cooking, but this kind of brisket isn't, and I want to highlight that difference as much as I can in this style of cooking. With kosher barbecue, it's the same story as all other kinds of barbecue. The key is managing your fire well. It's the magic, that's the secret. Everybody wants to know what the secret is. You want to know what's Aaron Franklin's secret? The secret is there is no secret. He's paying careful attention to details and taking immaculate care of his fire. So don't look for a secret. You got to put in the hard work. You got to do it the hard way in order to get the best results. So manage your fire, you're going to produce great barbecue. Ooh, hot. And you're probably also going to lose some arm hairs. I know I have. All right. We got this fella right here. Okay, we got bark, but no burn. Man, this bark is going to be ridiculously good. These are gonna be killer. These guys are done. If you guys look at this, you guys see this great bark. Now, on one of my recent videos, I had a troll who's a total knucklehead, and he's basically telling me that all my barbecue is burnt. Well, there's a distinct difference between burnt and bark. Bark is desirable, and everybody who's not a knucklehead knows it. Burnt is the exterior has dehydrated, and it's burnt. You know, it's not tasty. It isn't the same thing as the bark. This dark exterior is a result of the smoke, the rendered fat, and the Maillard reaction that takes place on the exterior of the meat over long periods of time at low temperatures. So it's the combination of everything that you want in your barbecue. It's smoke, it's rendered fat, it's Maillard reaction, it's the seasonings you used, and it's the smoke. It's the 5 parts of delicious barbecue. So every bite on the exterior of this beef rib is going to be out of sight good. So bark is what you want. You don't want burnt. So as long as you're keeping the temperature low and steady, you're going to get gold at the end. Black gold. Done.
Sit up straight.
Pardon me. One of the unique things about doing kosher food is that it has to be certified as kosher so that other observant Jews in the area can know that they can trust what they're eating is kosher and they're not eating meat that's treif or unfit. So in order to make sure that the meat is kosher, there are 2 things that I had to do for this cook. One is find a mashgiach, or in this case a mashgicha, so a female mashgiach essentially, and then also is to work with a local agency that certifies food as being kosher. And so here Danny is my mashgicha today, and so she's observing everything and making sure that everything is going according to plan, that we don't ruin the meat by doing something that would render it unkosher. And so the big kind of umbrella term for the rules of food processing is kashrut. But what does kosher mean? What is kashrut? What's the word mean?
Kosher literally means fit. So you'll sometimes hear on TV shows, it'll be like, oh, it's all the contract's kosher. It means it's fit, it's ready to go.
I didn't know that it applied to anything besides food.
Yeah.
One thing, in order to make sure that the food is kosher, actually Danny had to light the fire this morning. People getting hungry? Yeah. Danny actually had to be the one to light the fire, so she got the whole process started. So what's the rule about lighting the fire?
So let's take a step back. A mashgiach or mashgicha's whole role has to do with overseeing the cook, checking to make sure all the meat that comes in is kosher and certified before it gets opened. And the simplest way for a mashgiach to do his or her job is to light the fire, which is called bishul Yisrael, because that way the Jews, as long as a Jew has been involved in the cooking process, anybody can cook it. And so the simplest way to do that is turn on the stove, turn on the pilot light, and once that light's on, you're good to go.
What does that mean, the translation of the 2-word phrase that you said?
Bishul Yisrael. Bishul has to do with cooking, and Yisrael is like an Israelite, a Jew, in this case.
So cooked by a Jewish person. Is that what it means?
Yeah.
In kashrut terms, it would be accurate to say that you cooked the meat too, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can take dual credit or like dual lumps for a mistake if it turned out that way.
No.
One of the things that I was curious about when I was kind of researching what kosher food is that there's a very specific slaughtering process. So not only do you not eat pork, but even beef, it has to be slaughtered in a certain way. What's the reasoning behind that?
So animals that are kosher are animals that chews its cud and have a cud and has a cleft hoof. And the birds are listed in the Torah, in the Old Testament, in the 5 books of Moses. And the fish have to have fins and scales. So with the cow or lamb or land animals, actually for birds as well, you have to have a ritual slaughterer known as a shochet, who is very knowledgeable, many times as a rabbi.
Sure.
And they use a very, very, very sharp knife. This is not a machete. This is a knife that if you were to hold it above your skin and you had hair there, it would take it right off. You wouldn't feel it. The knife can't have any nicks, because the whole goal is to have one fall swoop in the right spot where it'll painlessly and immediately kill the animal. Any nick would render that animal not kosher. It would be sold to a non-kosher supplier. After that, the lungs are checked to make sure the animal was healthy. As long as the animal didn't have disease, it's kosher. There are 2 different categories. Non-glot, which is something like Hebrew National hot dogs you might see on the shelves. Mm-hmm. The lungs may have abrasions or some issues, but it's still healthy. It's just not smooth. Glot means smooth, that these lungs are perfectly smooth. We want to make sure the cow doesn't have that. And so traditionally in America, most people hold glot kosher, and all the meat we cook today is glot kosher. There's also a salting process for all kosher meat. It's salt and washed to draw out the blood. As it says, you shouldn't eat the blood of an animal. So
for the life is in the blood.
For the life is in the blood. So we take that, we salt it 3 times and wash it and draw out all the blood. Which is interesting, because on our last cook, we really thought the brisket would be saltier than it was.
Right.
And you know what? When Franklin did a kosher cook with these 2 other chefs, their brisket also said it was not salty. They cut back on the salt thinking it would be salty. wasn't salty
Maybe
enough.
it's the soaking draws out the salt again.
It's possible, and I just don't think brisket absorbs enough versus skirt steak and some of the other cuts that
Like
definitely
thinner,
are salty,
maybe?
that are definitely saltier right away.
Anthony Bourdain once said that the only two people who know brisket are Jews and Texans. And so brisket is a very common Jewish food, but the way it's cooked is very different than what we're doing today.
Yeah.
So what's the usual way that Jewish people would be cooking brisket in their homes?
That's a great question. So it really comes down to my mom and my grandma. Shout out to them because I learned how to cook all these things because of them. These are family recipes.
Sure.
And not to give too much away, but a lot of it has to do with like a tomato-based sauce of some sort with broth and tomato paste and sautéed onions, garlic. You can have carrots in there, and it's really cooked kind of low and slow, not as low as a smoker.
Sure.
Depending, some people do 280, 300, even 350, but it really, most good Jewish mothers, grandmothers know how to cook a good brisket.
Okay, hundreds of years ago, I doubt that there were kosher certification agencies. So what did Jewish people who kept kosher do to make sure what they were eating was kosher?
Sure. So you'd have small towns and you knew the butcher, you knew the teachers, you knew the rabbi, and the rabbi said, I trust this guy, you trusted the guy. Everything was based on trust and
Sure.
knowing people and knowing that they are a Sabbath observant Jew, that they are trustworthy, that they are honest. It doesn't mean things don't still happen then, still don't happen today, but people try to be really scrupulous and really careful about it today, which is why we have agencies that are recognized and trustworthy, and they act as the verification that, this restaurant is following the laws of kosher.
I've heard for many years that kosher means blessed by a rabbi, but there's no rabbi here. What is that?
The meat is not blessed by a rabbi. It is someone who is trained, usually as a rabbi, to slaughter the animal. But the animal is not literally blessed by a rabbi, or when you're cooking it, you can't just go to Ralph's or your grocery market and be like, buy a piece of meat and bless and it's kosher. It's always funny when like we see Happy Hanukkah signs right by the ham. It's like, no, it's still not kosher. Can't bless it. If it were that easy, it would be cool, but it's not. So it just means that it has to be fit and gone through the process of salted after it's been killed by a ritual slaughterer with this very, very sharp knife.
I want to thank you specifically for working with me on this. This is something I was trying to make happen for a long time. And I needed to find somebody who was willing to work with me and be willing to educate me on stuff I didn't understand and know that I'm going to come to the table with almost zero knowledge. So thank you so much for being here to help out with this, to watch over the process. And,
Thank you for
and
letting me.
Yeah, it's been my
Learning
privilege.
from the master.
Time to finish this cook. Now we can't end the video without showing you some of the meat, so we're going to take some of these beef ribs inside, slice them up, and show you what we got. Well, yeah, just so one thing I will say is that these may be beef short ribs, but they're a slightly different cut than what I'm used to, so I'm curious to see how they turned out. So you notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bones right here. Usually I'm only cooking 3 bones, so that's different, and I'm not exactly sure how the cut is different, but let's open this guy up and see what we got cooking here. All right, so we got big thick smoke ring on there. Got a lot of intramuscular fat right there, so we should be good to go.
It's so big.
We do.
I
Take it.
I don't like it big as
No, that's a good spot.
mine.
Okay,
Here we go.
Ezra's going.
Oh man.
That's good. Wow.
Oh man.
Oh.
Oh.
Always right.
Always right.
Delicious.
Yeah, okay, so my thoughts were, I thought the bark was really good. Lots of flavor on the exterior. There wasn't as much marbling as in the ribs that I usually cook, but there was still enough that, you know, it was still moist. And so it's just kind of a different texture than what I'd expected in my head. So compared to what you're used to, what's this like?
So as you're saying, like you're tending to find more consistent cuts of non-kosher meat. You see it, it's like consistent every time,
Right.
pretty much.
Right.
With kosher cuts, as you saw, we did the same ribs last time, but they were beefier. We think they're from higher up, right? You kind of get what you get. It's the same processor, same manufacturer, because there's a lot of different kosher manufacturers and processors. I really think, I mean, this is still phenomenal. You're right. I think it does have less marbling, but this is the best you can get with this meat, and this is still It was choice meat, which is actually hard to find kosher. So I'm over the moon. Like, I would not know the difference unless you're like, well, it could use more marbling. Now that you say it, I'm like, well, but we don't get to choose necessarily.
I still eat it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna...
As you still eat it.
Yeah.
What? I can't...
It's yummy.
It's yummy? Okay, well, he approves, and, you know, for trying to cook something I've not done exactly like this before, I'm really pleased with the results. You get great flavor, and something really enjoyable to eat. So, thanks for having me be able to do this, and
Thank
I
you.
hope you guys enjoy them. You
I'm gonna just
take the rest.
take the rest and walk out
Oh,
here.
thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, gladly.
You want that? Great. As Bez?
In there.
Can I fight again? Can I fight with you again? Ow. Ow.
What happened, honestly?
Hey guys, thanks for watching Mad Scientist BBQ. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit the like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also follow me on social media at Mad Scientist BBQ. See you next time.